Hello and good day. Today we are going to explore, as part of our Cattaraugus County Health Department Performance Evaluation Training Series or System Training Series, we're going to explore creating a new employee workbook. And as we do that, we will also be looking at the performance evaluation form and to some extent the employee satisfaction survey form. This is going to be a longer video. There's a lot to cover in this video, and we're going to be looking at kind of the nuts and bolts of things here. So let's go ahead and get started. If you remember from video one, we're going to do everything through this workbook, the Cattaraugus County Health Department Performance Evaluation System. So let's go ahead and open that up. It's going to open on the other screen. I'm going to bring it over here. So let me grab it for you and show you what happened. And there it is, right? You can see it. You may recall this from the first video. So today we're going to create a new employee evaluation workbook. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to click on the button. Certainly you could, read through what's going on here. And a new workbook opens up. The Test Employee Performance Reviews Workbook. You can call from video one. This, I showed you where this was and told you this is sort of the standard workbook. You're going to get a series of pop-ups here saying, please read. Certainly on your first time doing this, read through these, okay? But you're gonna learn a lot of what these say as part of this video today. So I'm going to click through them quickly. And there's 3 of them there. Whenever you see a pop-up window, if you haven't seen it before, read it. Don't just click OK. Actually read what's there. It's helpful stuff. It's there for a reason. Okay, so we are back on this workbook. Here it is. And part 1 of this is employee information. Okay, so I'm actually going to enter some of this in. We're going to call Jane Doe. That's the name. The employee ID is 12345. The initial hire date is 1/1/1993. The performance review date, start date, we're going to say that that's 1/1/1994. Now, this is something that you should read. Essentially, what this is telling you something about how you need to enter in the performance review start date and the performance review end date. Read it. We're not going to read it now. 1/1/1995. Supervisor name is Ian Manager. You can see it calculated the service years. Okay. Now, before we move on to choose the civil service title, I want to show you a few things. One is, if you don't understand what is being asked, there are comments here. So, this is the employee's name according to county HR records. Okay. So if you see one of these little red triangles, take a look at them. It'll give you some clue on what's supposed to be entered there. Okay. We're about to enter the civil service title, but before we do that, we're going to just quickly look down here. The current civil service title, and the only reason it's the current one is simply because this is what was saved, is child find assistant. And you'll see that, down here you'll see something called competencies, which we'll talk about, but they're all, child find assistant competency 1, competency 2. all of that is reference data. And if you recall from the first video, these reference data are stored in their own workbook. It's called PES references. You don't have to worry about that, but you want to know where those come from because I'm going to show you what happens when we change the civil service title. So we'll make this person a community health nurse. And it's going to say updating the technical competencies, public health competencies, training requirements for a community health nurse. You're going to say, yep, go ahead, do that. And it's going to think for a minute. And after it's done thinking, you will notice that these are now community health nurse competencies. Okay. And again, those come from, community health nurse training requirements. Those come from that PES folder. I'm sorry, the PES references Excel workbook. Okay, so that's nice. It automatically updates that for you based on the position. All right, so we're not going to choose a division program yet. We're going to do it at the very end, and there's a reason for that I do want to show you. But I want to go through the workbook first in the performance review. This is the things that need to be completed for performance review. Everything in yellow is required. You try to submit this at the bottom of the review form here without something being in a yellow space, it won't let you do that. So everything has to be in yellow. Okay, so here are the various. So part 2, core values and objectives. This is stuff that comes from the Cattaraugus County Human Resources Department. If you're looking at this, you should potentially recognize these things, these performance categories, okay? These are all part of your current paper evaluations. They're literally the exact same language that the county HR department expects. And these final ratings need to be completed. Again, everything in yellow is mandatory. Anything in blue is stuff that the employee should complete probably before they sit down with the manager for their review. Similarly, everything in sort of, I don't know what you call it, orange, red, pink, anything in this color here needs to be completed by the manager. Again, ideally before the sit down period and the actual meeting with the employee and manager. Okay. These actually do not have to be completed for things to submit. It's only the stuff in yellow, right? But you should still submit this, or you should still fill these out. So we're going to quickly fill this out. We're going to do this real quick, and we're going to do it real quick because you can't actually do this. You can copy and paste. All right. Notice that those are drop downs. Okay. You can put comments and performance improvement goals or comments here for each of those performance categories. All right. All right, so that's the county stuff. There are actually 2 other county performance categories at the bottom, and when we get there, I'll show you why they are there. There's a reason for that. Let's look at this next session. This is part 2, position-specific performance criteria. Okay, so technical competencies and public health competencies, and we'll also look at career competencies too. But if you had any chance to look at the video on workforce development, you should know what a technical competency and a public health competency are. These are required for accreditation um, reasons, and also they're good. This is a good way to um, think about evaluation, not from the standpoint of, oh, we're you know Joe didn't do things well and Susie did things good or what have you. We're looking at continual improvement here, right? And we want good, solid feedback, um, so we can provide training opportunities to improve, right? And we'll look at the training opportunities a little bit further down the form here. But unlike the county core values and objectives, there's a different rating system here. Okay, so these aren't exceeds expectation, meets expectations, needs improvement. This is non-aware, informed, experienced, and expert. Okay, so this is with regard, and there's definitions for this, and I actually didn't put those in here, but I think you can get the idea. So there's also a performance standard. So for this particular position, which is the community health nurse, the default, and all of these will need to get changed and talked about and figured out, but the default is informed. Okay, so let's hover over this. Does it tell you here? No, it doesn't tell you what informed means, but well, it tells you right here. It has full knowledge, ability, or skill. Um, so we're going to go ahead and fill this out. Now, as I'm doing this, I'll talk about technical competencies. Technical competencies are competencies associated with, I guess, doing the tasks associated with the job. Um, they are more technical in nature. It's what you would, these aren't necessarily like people skills, although they might be. That's something to think about. But it's more skills that have something to do with, actually getting something done, being able to use a computer program, something like that. A public health competency, and again, this is coming straight from accreditation. A public health competency is something that was put together. You can see it here, and the Council of Linkages between Academia and Public Health Practices core competencies. They tend to be softer than the technical competencies. Okay, so these might be more, um, people type of skills, that kind of thing. These are going to also be decided based on position. Okay, and you can see here we just have placeholders right now. So we'll go ahead and rate these. Okay. And you can see I'm just guessing here. These are this isn't just choosing randomly. Okay. Here, give me a moment. I gotta get my dog. Bodie, that's enough, buddy. No, no barking. I apologize. I'm sorry about that. Um, so technical competencies and public health competencies are based on civil service positions. They are associated with a civil service position. A career competency is actually associated with a person. So you can imagine that within different programs, yes, a person might have a civil service title, but that person might be assigned, we'll call it different other competencies. They might be competent in other things that allow some kind of specialization. Okay, so for instance, you might have a community health nurse that's been assigned to perform a specific task that no other community health nurse is going to perform, and they're going to have to be competent in that. Okay, so that's what this is all about. You may also, another way to use this is, a particular sanitarian is sort of being groomed to be a manager, right? So they may have some career competencies associated with management. Okay, so these competencies, these career competencies, are associated with specific people, not a position. Okay, and again, you can see here that these are just, uh, these are just default things. Okay, so now we've rated our employee here, Jane Doe. We've rated her on her core values and objectives that the county requires. We've rated her on her technical and public health competencies, which the accreditation requires. And we've also put career competencies in there, which is actually also kind of part of accreditation. We need those to look at things like um, cross training and um, oh my gosh, and retention and things like that. Now we're moving on to the next section. Okay, and this is called the annual learning and career development plan. So you can imagine that different every year you may have training requirements dependent on position. Okay, so you have a certain position, you're required to do certain trainings every year. Some of those trainings might be associated with your licensure, right? So some of our nurses have professional credit hours, and we do have a couple of registered sanitarians, and they have professional credit hours. We have an engineer, he has professional credit hours. So anything that's a license training requirement would be listed here. Uh, we'll talk about that in more detail. And so, you can determine whether it's completed or not, and then how good was the training? Was the training effective, marginal, poor, what have you? And you need to kind of read the definitions of those things. So that's what we're looking at here for the career development plan. All right. And so when you are filling this out, you are thinking about, did I get these training requirements done during the time period that this review is looking at? Okay. That's what this is all about. And so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to, and you don't, again, you can see here on the side, they're all dummy data, right? And these all, for most people, they're not going to have any of these licensure training requirements. It's just not going to be there. And I'm just doing this fast, right? Because I want to get done. Let's pick a value here. Okay. And we'll go here. Now, I just filled all of this in, and I didn't talk to you about external training requirements and internal training requirements. I did mention licensure. So external are things that are required by outside organizations to the Cattaraugus County Health Department. This might be things required by the New York State Department of Health for your position or the position being looked at. But again, these are position based. These are training requirements by position. Internal training requirements are things that the Cattaraugus County Health Department or Cattaraugus County as a whole, right, requires you to take. Um, and so these are all going to have to be decided upon and put in here. Okay. So these first three sections are position specific: licensure training, external training, and internal training. The next three sections are competency dependent, right? So the idea here is at your last performance review, maybe you didn't do good on some of these competencies up here. And I hate to use the term do good, right? Because we're all looking to improve. Nobody's perfect. But it was determined that, you needed some additional training in some of the technical competencies or some of the public health competencies or in some of your career competencies. And so you sat down, or somehow it was determined that you would have, some training to do to improve your competency. So, technical competency training 1, right? And public health competency training 1, right? Obviously, I'm just entering in default values here, but you would, as best you can, describe the training you're going to take. If it's a course name, you would do that. But a training could simply be, spend 4 hours with, senior staff person to learn some skill, right? I mean, you could enter it in that way too, or what have you. But there's, these are training requirements based on the previous year's performance reviews. Things that, okay, we need a little training here. We're gonna do it, right? So, we're gonna enter these in. All right. Now notice here there are some of these in yellow that I'm not entering in. That's okay. All right. If there was in the software, is programmed to do this. If there was something listed here and you didn't enter in these things, it would tell you. But because there's nothing listed here when you try to submit, it's okay. It's not good. It'll accept that. And then you have comments here. Now, you'll see here the training requirement rating. This is the idea. We want to have a sense across the department if our training is effective, right? And so this is asking the employee, hey, did this training do what you thought it would do? And you can see it's effective, highly effective, marginal, poor, and appropriate, right? So, we collect that data. Actually, all this data is collected and aggregated, and graphs are made, and we'll show that in other videos. One thing you'll see here is there's always a comments section, right? So you can always enter comments there. There's a comment section here for performance improvement goals, comments, right? So there's always a comment section. And actually, those are used, those comment sections are used for the county form, which we'll show you how to do that eventually. All right, here are 2 more county performance categories. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, why are they down here? Right? Shouldn't they be up in part 1 where we have all the county stuff? And that's true. However, these 2 here, knowledge of position and training and development, they are actually based on part 3 stuff, right? So knowledge of position is really based on the competencies, right? So if you are highly competent, if you've gone through and filled in these competencies and you've done pretty good, right? Then that's a good indicator of what your knowledge of the position is. Okay. And so there's actually a little formula, and I won't go into it, but there's a little formula there that the software will automatically look at how you scored up here, and it'll give you a recommended rating. So in this particular instance, with your score on your competencies, the recommended rating was exceeds expectations. Okay. That said, notice it's not yellow, right? The manager can change that, right? This is what gets recorded, what's in yellow. This is just the software's way of saying, hey, here's what I would recommend based on the competencies. Similarly, with training and development, we're looking at, did the employee do the training that they were supposed to do last year? And so it looks at this training here and determines a rating based on the completion of that training. So in this particular case, it said needs improvement, but we're going to say, no, they did okay. Change it to meets expectations. And then the final rating is takes all those performance categories, runs it through a formula, and it gives, the recommended final rating. Okay, and you can see that's not in yellow, right? But this one is, so we're going to accept that. We're going to say this employee meets expectations, right? And then you have, comments here. There's an acknowledgement section, employee signature, who was, I think we called her Jane Doe, right? And, Jane Doe did this, what are we looking at, 1994? So I think we're going to go actually, it was 95. So I think we're going to say 4/1/1995. In the evaluator signature, that was Ian Manager, right? And it is, I will say that he signed in on 4/3/1995. Okay, now we're going to click these buttons in a minute. But if you recall, way back up here, so first of all, I want to show you something. Notice the dates here, 94, 90. You guys probably didn't even notice this. But you need to, the date here on this tab, okay? See the tab down here, 94 to 95? That tab name was automatically changed when I put in these dates. Okay, you probably didn't see that, and I forgot to tell you about it. But now you're probably saying, well, this is all great, Chris, but this is a read-only file. So you went through and you spent all your time doing this, and we can't even save it. It's read-only. Understood. So you may also recall that I left this blank. So what happens here, as soon as I finish this last piece of information in part one, okay, as soon as I do this test employee performance review is going to save. And it's going to save, and I'll show you in a minute where it saves to, but it's going to save as a file name based on the division and program where this employee works. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, so this is a community health nurse. We're going to say that they work in the community health clinic. Aha, okay. So remember, we're creating a new workbook for Jane Doe. And so Jane Doe, we only want Jane Doe or her manager to be able to access this workbook. So we're asking Jane Doe for a password. there's actually two passwords here. There's Jane Doe's passwords, and there's what we call a program or master password. And that master password is by program. So the manager of the program will be able to access all the workbooks of the people in their program. So we're going to type in Jane Doe's password here, and we're going to say password. Okay, and this is all stored somewhere. You don't need to know where, but it's all stored somewhere and it's all accessed. And we're going to say okay. So it goes and it saves it. It says new staff performance evaluation workbook created for Jane Doe, working in the patient service. Oh, so we're doing this. So it creates it. And sure enough, look at that. It changed the name of the workbook. This is Jane Doe's workbook. Okay, there it is. And we have filled in all the information for Jane Doe's first performance review. Okay, so now what we're going to do is, well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to satisfy the county human resources department. So we're going to say create county employee evaluation form. Enter manager password to complete form submission. Oh boy. Let's hope I got the right one. Oh shoot. We're going to say yes. Complete form submission. I'm going to try this one more time. If it does not work, we're going to skip this. Let me try password. We're going to try one more time. Ah, shoot. I should have looked and saw what it was. So, shame on me. I'm going to say no. It's going to exit that. You know what? You know what we're going to do? We're going to save this. And we're going to reopen Jane Doe's notebook here in our next lesson. And by that time, I'll have figured out the passwords. But we've walked through the form and how it gets filled out. Talked a little bit about things. In the next video, we'll reopen this form and we will hit these buttons. Okay, and we'll have the passwords to do that. I'll make sure we do. All right, so that's all we're going to do for now. You can actually, when you're done with this, you can actually just save it and close it, and that's fine. This will pop back up when you do, so you could go on to the next skill, and we'll be accessing Jane Doe's workbook in our next video, and we'll actually do the submission on things. Okay? All right, well, that's it for this video. Thanks for listening. Bye.